Well, this lady doesn't really need an introduction. She's just been introduced. Everybody sees her and loves her. This is Burling Leong, and I've known her for quite a while, and whenever I need something, she's got it. And that's most of in my garden, my pollies, and she also has my rose there. I don't want to keep talking, I'll do a few little things about her. She's been employed with the Sequoia Nursery for 35 years. And she manages all aspects of the operation, including managing employees, propagation. She hybridizes roses. She conducts tours for garden clubs and horticultural classes. And she also works for the restoration of the rose gardens at Hearst Castle and Rogers State Park. In the future, she's been talking about this, she'll be working to restore tree rose standards at the Rancho Los Alamitos Park in Long Beach, California. She's, of course, at Burlington Rose Nursery. If you ever want anything, this wonderful lady has what you've got. Burling.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What you're seeing for the first time is my new sign. My brother and my sister-in-law had that sign made for me for my birthday present, so that was really nice, and my brother put it up for me. And the grape stakes up there, was some farmer were giving away these grape stakes because now they used to put support their grapes with these wooden stakes, and now they're all putting metal, and they just throw those on the side of the road and put free. So they're really sturdy, and they've been treated, so we reuse them for different things. And it's kind of nice. My brother made that little decorative thing and look a little rustic, but so I believe in recycling whenever possible. So they really come in good use, and they make real nice, strong stakes to stake your roses and stuff too.
What rose are you going to drape over the top?
Probably going to have a climbing rose. Neither one of my climbing roses are climbing Renee. Probably go over it real well. It's thornless, so it really would be really nice to climb up on that trellis. Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me to be your speaker today, and thank you for coming and purchasing some roses from me, and I really appreciate that. And it's always nice to see everyone and familiar faces. Through the years, I've been speaking to quite a few different rose societies and districts and nationals, and I feel like we're part of family, and we all have one thing in common. No matter what, we love roses, and that's why we're here, and we love to promote roses. Sometimes when I have time during, for some of you who have been to my nursery, as you know, I only have 3 employees. It's me, myself, and I, so I do everything. So sometimes I want to do some breeding, so like every other 2 or 3 years I'll decide to start breeding some roses, and especially when I get some new roses and I go, wow, this one will probably make a good parent, going to cross this with this. And I'm sure some of you that have bred roses are you probably think of the same thing when you run across a new rose and wonder about the possibility of genetics behind it, if you could pass on some good genetics and create, some nice roses to put out on the market. For me, I've been in the business, as some of you probably already know. I worked for Ralph Moore for over 35 years, and when he closed the nursery, I decided to go ahead and start my own, which I don't know if that was a good idea or not, but that's when the housing market tanked. And you remember 2008, everybody lost in the stock market, housing tank, and everything went downhill. A lot of nurseries closed, a lot of, not just rose nurseries, but a lot of, nurseries that grew perennials and trees and shrubs. So that was a fighting point there, housing market. So in 2009, when, actually Sequoia closed pretty much in 2008. Started my own nursery in 2009. My property, I have 2 acres. For some of you who've been to my place, you've probably seen my nursery. It's nothing fancy, no fancy Dutch houses, multi-million-dollar Dutch houses. I use a lot of recycled material. Like I said, I found the grape stakes. Well, my brother knew somebody that worked for a cable company, and they had these perfect curved arching plastic they were going to send to the dump, and so we recycled that and put a 2x4 down center, got 2 pieces, so we got this skeletal, looks like a dinosaur skeleton look, but it works. And so it works, and then I'm recycling something that they would, be in the dump by now and probably never decompose, but it works for me. So I believe in recycling. So that's how pretty much I've started, because Ralph Moore closes his nursery. So I started, it was kind of a frenzy time, a difficult time for me. A lot of things went to Texas A&M, went to Greenheart. So, and my place was not prepared to even start a nursery. It was a 2-acre walnut orchard, and we all know roses need sunshine. So I got a chainsaw and cut a whole row of walnut trees down. I had to put my own greenhouses up. My brother helped me quite a bit because he's a carpenter and he built a lot of Costco's up and down California. So he knew how to put things together for me. So he helped build greenhouses with me and found recycled pots. When he built a Costco, you got landscape jobs. You know, $300,000 landscaped a lot of pots, and so the landscaper said, oh, you could take the pots. So that's where all my 5 gallons again. Oh yeah, I'll take them. So, you know, that really helps. You don't have to buy them, and I believe in recycling. So that's what I use, recycle pots, and then gathering up my stock material and building that up so I could get all that in production was a task. But some of you that have known me have voluntarily gave me some cutting material that I was be able to start building up my stock plants and be able to start putting a lot of more roses out on the market. And I'm still collecting more. As you know, Greenheart doesn't put out as many roses that they thought they were going to. They collected all Ralph Moore, D. Bennett's, and Bernadellas, and Wendy White roses. And so some of the other nurseries has closed. He went and got all these miniatures and captured the market, but he didn't fulfill in putting them out on the market. And so I was lucky to meet Sue O'Brien, which is the daughter of Dee Bennett, and she had a lot of her roses in her yard. And so you're welcome to take cuttings if you want. I said, sure. So I found out she only lived in Selma, which is maybe about 40 miles away. Drove down there and got my ice chest, and so took a lot of her cuttings. So hopefully I'll be able to offer some more of her roses that she put out back on the market for people that, you know, are interested in buying her roses. And of course, I'm busy trying to help save a lot of rare roses. Sacramento, as you know, Sacramento Historical Rose Garden is going through some changes, and they're afraid they might move some roses and then, you know, lose them forever. And a lot of these roses are rare, and a lot of nurseries aren't offering them. So I said, okay, send me the most rarest rose you have first, and we'll see if I could duplicate and keep those going. And then if you do lose a rose, I'll be able to back you up with another rose and offer it back to you, and you can plant it back in the ground. So I'm beginning to find out that's one of my main roles now, is saving a lot of rare roses and preserving, because it's such a wonderful, important genetic pool that it will be lost forever if we didn't, you know, preserve some of these roses. And as you know, a lot of these roses has a lot of history behind it. And I have learned by collecting these roses, growing these roses, not only do I know the habit of the roses, but the name and why it was named that. And through my travels and talking to various rose societies, I get the opportunity to learn a lot about these roses and why they were named that and just the history. And so it's been a learning experience for me, and I hope to continue. So we kind of went over the hill with the housing. Okay, great. I'm going to stay in it for a while, you know, because I had that Hearst Castle project. Don't want to let that down. I keep plugging. And all you folks have been very supportive of me, and so that encouraged me to keep going. And then all of a sudden, the drought was really hit the last couple of years, and I have my own water well. I'm not hooked up to the city. I live out in the country on 2 acres. So cross my fingers, I had to put 1,000 foot of pipe down, and I'm on the bottom of my well. Okay, so that is scary, because on the average, the oil drilling companies are kind of gouging everybody else, the farmers and everybody else, because they're starting ground level. Instead of drilling deeper into existing well, they require you to start from ground level. So that's almost 200 feet free for them, and they're charging, you know, about almost $100 a foot or something. And so they're just really hurting a lot of the farmers. And but some of the big farmers, they can afford to go 300, 400 feet. Me, I'm just a little 2-acre person, just struggling, and if I had to put a well in, that's going to really set me back or put me out of business. So I keep crossing my finger, and I do a rain dance and pray for rain. And so we did get some this year, and hopefully this year we'll get some more so I don't have to drill. There is one pump person that will go ahead and drill in an existing well, but guess what? He's so booked up, he's 2 years behind. So I keep praying. So anyway, but I'm here to give a little bit of history about Burlington Rose Nursery, and some of you got to know me, or I know quite a few of you out there, and it's so nice to be able to talk to you and catch up on what's going on and things. And so I really appreciate being here today. So we'll go ahead and go on. As I mentioned, I do have time to do a little bit of breeding. This is Flamingo Dancer. This is one of the first one I bred. So it's a really good grower. Any rose that I put out has to produce through cuttings because I don't have a lot of time to do a lot of budding, only for special products out at Hearst Castle or saving some rare roses that cannot be propagated through cuttings. So any of my roses I put, I have to grow like a weed. If it don't, I won't put it out. That's just how it is. I don't have time to baby roses. Sir, this one, some of you, I have this one on the table as a raffle prize. This is School Spirit. And this one has an interesting story behind this one, like a lot of roses have an interesting story behind. I went to a little grammar school that's 150 years old, the oldest little grammar school in Tulare County, and probably in the state, I don't know, it's 150 years old. So they had their 150th anniversary a couple years back, and so we decided to name a rose called School Spirit in honor of that. And anybody that attended that school, we had a big get-together to celebrate that school. So anybody that went to that school, if you only didn't even graduate, went to just a little time, we send out whoever we could find that had anything to do with the school. And so I named that School Spirit to help sell the rose to get money to help provide food and things like that. So that's what it is. So it's a good name, and I think it's a good name for any school that might be interested in selling it as a fundraiser. And everybody has School Spirit, right? We all went to school and graduated. We all have our famous school we want to support, whether it's grammar school, high school, or college. So that one seems to be pretty popular, and that one roots fairly easy. Now, if you want a vigorous climber, that one's named after my dad, Climbing O'Brien. Yeah, I know. There's a story behind that, too. So anyway. But that one is very vigorous. Oh my God, the foliage is, new foliage is very, very red. So you got this really nice foliage on it. It's very hardy. Roots like a weed too. This one, as you can see, is Maroon 8. That one is really nice to take photos of. People keep asking me for that, and I get sold out quite a bit on that one, Maroon 8. And this is my next one I'm going to introduce in 2007. Pretty much sold out for what I have now. I need to get in production. I don't know if the lighting, if we could dim the lights, you could see a little bit better. But that one is a tan, brown, mauve color. I just found out that some of these rose farms that provide cut flowers for florists and weddings. I really love this rose. So I have 2 rose farms down in the Southern California area. I want 100 roses each of this to plant in their property for cut flowers. So that one is pretty much, and that one roots really well too. So like I mentioned, all my roses that I ever put out has to root like a weed or I won't put it out. Okay, Connie Santa is going to be a Floribunda. This one is a mini Flora. That one is a climbing hybrid tea, almost Floribunda. Most of the time it blooms single, but it can bloom clustered. And this one is a Floribunda classified, and this one's a climbing Floribunda. Okay. I try to put out unusual colors and things, but you know, not just because they're unusual in color, but they have to root well and perform well, good foliage, disease resistant. But like I said, if they got to root at least almost 99.9% of the time, or otherwise I won't fool with them. Okay, as my early days starting out in the nursery, like I mentioned, only had limited space. I had to cut down walnut trees, but these are some of the things I did. I had, if you came to my nursery, I could show you. I try to keep things simple and buy things that are not so high tech or difficult to find after it breaks. And so anything that moves, anything that sprinkler part has too many moving parts. What happens when you have too many moving parts? Sooner or later, something's not going to move, and so you're going to lose a lot of plants. So I try to keep things simple, and I patronize my local irrigation companies and stores, and if I can't find it, just driving a couple miles, you know, to these local places. I'm not going to buy anything fancy that, you know, all of a sudden these companies are out of business or they no longer carry it, and then you're stuck. So I believe in keeping things simple. And a lot of my timers you could get very locally. You know, I use a lot of Longies. I use a lot of battery timers where I don't have electricity out there. So I keep it simple, and any of you could almost do everything what I do, okay? So it doesn't take, like I said, don't take a lot of money. It just take common sense and use local and easy to find things, nothing difficult, okay? So that way you don't have to spend too much money on finding things that no longer exist. So some of these are my early times collecting, getting things. Most of my stock plants are just in 5 gallons or 15s. So nothing in the ground. So if I had to move things, I could just easily get a dolly and move things around if I had to. I had to cut down a lot of walnut trees and put my own weed mat down a lot. The bigger containers are in drip, and I use a lot of the Roberts drip things. And if you move the plant, you could always reverse it and plug it up, okay? So that way you're not wasting water when it's on. So I believe in versatility in my irrigation system and easy to install, okay? No galvanized pipe. Remember in the day, Mr. Moore, we had galvanized pipe. Guess what happened when it freezes? Oh my God, it splits right at the T, and oh my God, and you got to cut, patch, and so everything is PVC or the black poly tubing type of irrigation system. Okay. So as you can see, I had to cut down the walnut trees. There's stumps out there. And so I have these stumps. So what I do, I just put a garden light, kind of drill a hole in the center of that walnut stump or put a table on it and use that as a working table. So I use it for something. So I'm surrounded by walnut trees.
On your 3/4 inch tubing, are you using couplers, or do you have like a stainless steel band that you just...
No, they're compression couplers.
Compression couplers?
Yeah, compression couplers. So all these things that I put on my nursery is pretty simple. I keep things simple, not too high tech. So as time went on, as the date on these slides, 2011, I started my nursery in 2009. So as you can see, as things start growing, it start developing, and it keeps expanding slowly. I keep adding more new roses or rare roses that people wanted me to start. See the little walnut stump? I put a table on it, and put one of those solar lights on it. And so anyway, I'm going to be talking about propagating roses. 2 techniques I use on my place is basically cuttings and chip budding. So those are my 2 techniques that I use. Cuttings, of course, is my preferable way to propagate, because of the reason less labor, because I'm only me, myself, and I, and it's least expensive, and it's quicker availability to the market. When you get a nice, well-rooted plant, you get within 3 or 4 months, it's ready to go and to be sold. So the varieties like miniatures, polyanthus, and some of the other roses that root well through cuttings, they could get to the market real quick. So I prefer using cuttings. Now this is my propagation mix for rooting cuttings, and it's pretty much 2/3 perlite and 1/3 peat moss. And I have this fancy wheelbarrow. I just put all this stuff, I'm teasing. So I'm not very big, so everything I do, you just get a bale of peat moss and a bale of perlite, and you just mix whatever you need, and that's it. I don't have a big mixing machine or anything fancy, so it's all by hand, and I just mix whatever I need. So like I said, what I do, any of you folks can do, okay? So there's actually two different size plug trays that I put my cuttings in. The top one is the 72 plug tray. It's ideal for the little, anything that has small cuttings like miniatures, polyanthus. And a 50 plug tray is for anything like floribundas and hybrid tea type cuttings, a little bit bigger. So those are basically the 2 main trays that I use at my nursery for propagation.
How deep are those?
They're not very deep, maybe about maybe a couple inches. So, to have a good plant, you should start with good, healthy cuttings. Have anybody started propagating yet themselves through cuttings? Okay. All right, good. So as we know, sometimes people want to send me cuttings, And I said, okay, but sometimes you don't know how far they've gone or what condition their plant is. For me, you know, the fresher, the better. For me, when I collect my cuttings, usually I would stick them in the soil pretty much that day. I wouldn't just collect the cuttings and then have them sit around. So the fresher, the better, get them. And then what I do is I trim, if it's a big hybrid tea and I have a lot of foliage, I take and cut some of the leaves back a little bit. And so that way the mist system be able to get down to in the plugged tray. Otherwise the water just kind of rolls off. If you got too big of leaves, they just roll off and don't get down to the soil level and keep that moisture down there so it can root. So start out with healthy, clean cuttings. That's important. And this is my mist system that I use. And it's with these little fogettes. And the ones that you would buy that would have this little tiny hole. Now, I have my own well because sometimes it has a lot of calcium. So over time, it can get plugged up. So what I did is got a little drill bit. Now, these are made of copper, and copper is easy to drill. So I got the 9/16 drill bit and just drilled a hole just a little bit deeper so some of these minor particles to just pass through and won't get plugged up to it. And so that solved my problems because before when I bought it, when a manufacturer, I put them in, they would constantly get plugged up. I didn't have a filter on my water pump, and so, but even, you know, a little speck of just algae or any calcium would build up, it would plug it up. So I just drilled the hole a little bit, and it spread out the mist system a little bit wider, so it would cover my, my rooting bed there. It's about 3 feet out. So by doing that, it dispersed the water even out farther, so that way I don't have any dry edges. So it covered my bed even more, did a more thorough job of the mist system by drilling the hole just a little bit bigger, okay? So there are little tricks you can do to help you on propagating. So I have a mist system that really, the clock that I use is a multi-versatile system. 2 stations could be on propagation, and the other 4 stations could be running regular, like your own garden area to run only once or twice a day. While the mist system, you could time it where, depending on the weather, right now they're starting at 8:30 and turning off about 5. In the summertime, it could be a little bit later because it don't get dark until almost 8 or 9. So you just adjust the time between start time and shut off time for the propagation mode. And sometimes in the summer, I don't cover my greenhouse. I found out when I cover my greenhouse, I have other plants in there that's not under mist. It gets spider mites, and I do not like to spray. Once you get spider mites, as you know, as some of you had spider mites, it's hard to get rid of because even when you recognize that you have a problem, it's almost too late. It's always infested and under leaves. It's hard to spray and hard to kill. So I just leave mine open and have a lot of air circulation, and that mist system, that cutting there, having to pop out of that one tray, but look at the roots on that. Just having that nice moisture, you can almost, you know, don't even have to have, you know, soil, but of course you have to transplant that because eventually it's going to use up that nutrition in that stem and that leaves. But with that mist system, it just, and that mist system, if anybody is interested in buying a timer, I could show you the company. It's like under $100, and it's so versatile, and I had it ever since I opened my nursery. I had no problems at all on it. Never broke down, simple, easy to operate. Yes, ma'am?
Keep it running from 8 in the morning to
Yeah, and then it turns off. It doesn't run at night, only during the day on the.
during the day.
It rotates every 5 minutes for about certain seconds. So you could break it down, you know, to seconds, but the shortest time is 5 minutes. It can't go down to 4 minutes or anything like that. 5 minutes, and then you can increase the mist time. You could get it down to 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 20 seconds, depending on the temperature. In hot summer days, it's running about 18 seconds. And every 5 minutes, psh, okay, and then shuts off, and then another 5 minutes come, psh, and it hits it. Okay? I think... But if anybody interested in wanting to know about that timer, it's very versatile, so you could use it in your regular operation in your yard.
Early, was that
Yes.
battery powered?
No, it's actually, there's a 9-volt battery that keeps your program there, just in case you have electricity shuts off for some reason, a blackout, but it'll retain the memory of your program in. But, so you don't have to keep reprogramming. And it runs on a 9-volt battery. But it is electrical that you have to have a, electrical plug-in. Okay? All right.
Of course, everybody's going to be asking me, what's the company that makes the...
It's DeWitt. I think it's, I could get that information for you if you're interested. But anybody who wants to, set up something simple, propagation, yeah, it's great. I recommend that. I think James has it. James, is yours still working?
It's fantastic. I've had a lot of different misters, and this one's really the best.
Oh, yeah, it's the best for the money. Oh, gosh. Yeah. It took a little while to get the hang of it, but once you got a hang of it, right, it's just foolproof. And for the price, gosh, you just can't beat it. Okay, now for transplanting soil mix, this is what I use: 1/2 perlite and 1/2 peat moss, and and you make it just a little fluffy mix. Then again, that's in the wheelbarrow. I just mix as I go and as I need. Okay. And all these things you can find: the perlite and the peat moss. Okay, and these happen to be young plants that have been transplanted. And so I usually transplant it in a smaller pot, maybe a 3-inch pot or a 4-inch, before they go into my vans or gallons.
Are you still inside at this point?
No, these are outside. You could just put them outside. But I have inside that same greenhouse with the mist, I have a bench that's not running on propagation mode, but on regular irrigation.
And what size container are you in now? 4 inch?
Well, right now, 3-inch, and then as they develop the root system, they'll bump them into the 5.5-inch bands that I sell them in, or bump them up into gallons, depending on variety. You mean from the mist system?
Yeah.
Okay, miniatures in the summertime, that's my main. I use Mother Nature to my advantage. She provides me that hot heat. Anybody being in the Central Valley, which I'm located in between Bakersfield and Fresno. Some of you guys probably on 99 forget this is too dang hot. I'm driving right through to go down Southern California. But if you happen to be in the Central Valley, it could get pretty hot. It gets up to sometimes 105. I mean, there was long spells you will get like 10 days at a time up in the hundreds. And this year, I think it was quite hot. I mean, we didn't get rain in September. We normally get at least 1 or 2 rains, but we didn't get any at all. So, but for me, as advantage of the heat, I rely on Mother Nature to heat up that mist and everything in the soil. And I say miniatures will root within 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks. And they're ready to hurry up and pull out. So I'm constantly always checking these plug trays, getting the ones that are already rooted, because you can see the roots in the soil. You yank on them and they, the soil is clinging to the roots. You got a little root ball. And then they're transplanted, and then they're out of the mist. And then I'm always constantly putting new cuttings in its place. So it's always getting in and out, transplanting cuttings in. So floribundas, all depends, genetically if they're easy to root. Floribundas and hybrid teas takes a little bit longer. It maybe take 3 weeks. But the climbers, they could root within 2 weeks. Miniatures, polyanthus, 2 weeks. And they should be out and transplanted that quick.
And trim while you...
Well, it all depends. No, until I transplant it into the 5-inch bands, and if they grow too tall before shipping, they have to fit in the box, I would trim to fit inside the box. But I try to keep my climbers as tall as possible, because usually a lot of customers like climbers to build and fence, and they like a big plant so they could get a good start, to build a wall or a fence, to cover a fence or something. So I've started a lot of my climbers into 1 gallons, because a lot of my customers like to have a big climber, at least a decent size for, they want to fill cover a fence or something. Anybody else, any more questions on this? Okay. So I'm trying to encourage all you guys to learn to propagate, and it's easy and is challenging in a way, especially when somebody gives you a cutting. You don't have this, you want to add it to your list. I said, sure. Some of the rare roses I'm working with, as I mentioned, that are hard to find rare roses I don't know anything about. So when somebody give me cuttings, what am I going to do? First of all, if it's got bud eyes, I'll bud it. But if some of the material is too young, I can't get bud eyes, I'll have to force to try to propagate through cuttings. So I do both, cuttings and budding, if they have the bud eyes, because I have no experience in propagating roses, so I don't know. And if it's so rare, you got to do both if you can, because if it didn't work through cuttings, then at least when I bud it on a bigger rootstock, I have a stock plant started that eventually, when it gets going, I could get propagation material off that, at least that stock plant to, continue on propagating. But you would try to save it, try to get at least one good stock plant to work with, a healthy one, okay? So it's a learning experience to me too, very, always learning something. Okay. And then, of course, the next type of propagation method I use is the chip budding, which you can, as long as you have well-rooted rootstock, you can chip bud year-round. Okay, and you could propagate roses when cuttings are not suitable. Sometimes somebody will send me cuttings that is not suitable for propagating in the dead of winter time because I do not have heating cables, the greenhouse is not covered, and of course they're not, because of the cold or temperature, they're not going to root as fast. So sometimes that cuttings can rot off before they even start to root. So what I do, and the temperature's not there, so I'll just go ahead and bud it. So probably in the wintertime it's better, if I'm trying to save a rare rose, if you could send me budwood, it's probably better for me to try to get a stock plant of that plant going. Okay. But if you have both, I'm going to do both and see what happens. I mean, you have to try it. You just got to keep trying. That's all. So another advantage of budding is that you can build up a stock plant quicker. And let's say you were breeding a rose. James will probably know that. You develop a rose, okay? Now you want to replicate it because you think about putting it on the market, or you want to build more plants up. Or it's just like you, if you have a favorite rose, but you want more of this favorite rose. Okay, so what you're going to do, if you do chip, in the dead of winter, you can chip bud because each eye has potential to make a plant. So if you have a stick that has 5 eyes on there, well, you could potentially have 5 plants out of that one stick. So normally when you make cuttings, you have to have, well, they said 3-eye cutting, right? 1, 2, 3, and you cut it right underneath the undernode, and you have a cutting. So it took 3 eyes to make a cutting. So each eye off of that stem has the potential to become a budded plant. And sometimes, like I said, you're going to bud it on a vigorous rootstock, and it's going to put out a lot more propagation material, so I could get more cuttings, and I could hurry up and build up my plant material a lot quicker. Like for instance, Maroon 8. If I need more stock plants than Maroon 8 apparently because there's so much in demand, so I need more stock plants available to give me more cuttings. So what I'm going to do in the wintertime is bud Maroon 8 onto a rootstock. So because and when I'm going into the winter, it's not advantageous for me to try to root because I'm not suitable for rooting in the winter. But for me to build up Maroon 8, each one of those eyes could be a plant. So I'm going to chip bud it on a rootstock called Pink Clouds, which Mr. Moore developed, and it's ideal for miniatures and for polyanthus. So I'm going to try to build up my stock plant for the next following year, so I'll have more stock plants to be able to get more cutting material to provide plants for the demand for the Maroon 8. So that's where chip budding will come in handy. Okay. And of course, it's hard to root roses. Some just won't root, so you gotta bud it in order to keep that rose going. And then, of course, if you're going to make a tree rose, you have to put on a taller rootstock standard. And what I do, for a tree rose for miniatures, like I mentioned, polyantha tree roses, Pink Clouds, and we'll do a really good job for those 2 type of classes. But for floribundas and hybrid teas, like I do for the Hearst Castle, is Dr. Huey, because it makes a nice stiff stem for tree roses. Now, some of you favor Fortuniana. I don't do Fortuniana. I find out Fortuniana for me, of all the 3 I root at the same time, Dr. Huey, Pink Clouds, and Fortuniana would be the last one to root. Pink Clouds will root first, Dr. Huey would be second, and Fortuniana would be third. So I don't even bother to even use Fortuniana myself because more or less my budding is budding tree roses for Hearst Castle. So I get the rootstock from UC Davis. I believe in using virus-free index rootstock. Jolene?
Do you do any 8-foot standards for some of the public gardens? You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I have never tried that tall. The only time I experiment and I budded like 8 foot something was a Cinderella. And of course, Cinderella is such an easy one to do. So I just do it as a fluke and did a topiary tree with 3 heads on it. Yeah, on an 8-foot stem. Because That one is easy to bud. If you want to practice budding, I would recommend that you use, try to practice with Cinderella. But the problem with, I know what you're talking about, you're looking for Renee.
Yes.
On an 8-foot for Oakland, is in
We need
Oakland?
5 of them.
You need 5 of them because apparently they broke off. Only problem is getting an 8-foot rootstock that would be vigorous enough to send that sap all the way up there.
Legrease?
Hmm.
Do you work with Legrease?
No, I don't. Who was the one who actually did it for you?
Klein Stocking.
Are they no longer doing it, or is it
They've gone.
they're gone? They're out of business. And what rootstock did they use?
Legrease, rootstock is Huey.
Dr. Huey?
The stem is Legrease.
Uh-huh.
And Renee at the top.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Double bud.
Double budded. So that's how they did it? Huh. I never tried it. I never tried it.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge. Oh my God. I can always call UC Davis and says, guess what? Do you have 8-foot rootstock
Legrease, yeah.
that you can save for me? And I'll probably, because shipping 8-foot rootstock is going to be hard. No matter, if it has to be budded with 8 foot, that means I have to order 10 foot because so much, about a foot has to be in the soil level or another foot has to be on top to keep that sap going. So I'm looking at least 10 to 12 foot rootstock.
They
Jolene?
have donors. They'll pay.
Huh? I know. First of all, I'm going to have to see if even UC Davis would even let me buy a 12-foot rootstock. If they even will let me go out there and they'll save me a 12, because they specialize in only sending 8 to 10-inch rootstock. But I talk them into sending me 48-foot rootstock for the Hearst Castle project. They're going to look at me and say, are you crazy? I have to drive up there with a trailer and haul them back and then rooting them. I'm going to have to make a miss head at least 15 feet high.
You'll be in the Chronicle. Pictures.
Are you going to help me, Julie? Okay. She's a witness. She's going to help me. She's going to help me.
So, Carl.
Huh? Carl, you going to help me too?
No, I've got the height.
You got the height. That's right. He could do the budding. I have to show you. You have to master that. Okay, so you need 5. I have to order at least 20 just in case they don't take. We got to keep trying. Huh?
I know.
I know. I wish I could help, but we'll see. Let me call UC Davis a call. I'm going to have to work and think about this. If I could get the rootstock, I'll try it.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay, I do have the Renee. You're talking about Renee, right? I have Renee, so the budwood's no problem.
Right.
It's the rootstock and getting it rooted and pushing. It's going to have to be, I would recommend, in a 5-gallon
It's
pot.
going to be tough to get a hold of a grease, though, isn't it?
Do they offer Legrease? If I could get that rootstock that long just on Dr. Huey, why bud and bud again?
Exactly.
Right? Cut to the chase. You bud right onto Dr. Huey.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no reason you couldn't.
Jolene. Okay, you guys, there she goes. She's my helper. Everybody's a witness.
I heard you say
Okay. I'll give UC Davis a call and see if we can come with some 12-foot rootstock. We'll have to get at least 20 of them.
Could you
Uh-huh.
chop off a standard that you have in your own yard and bud onto that?
You mean that's already been budded already?
Yeah, I mean, could you just, I mean,
Take the
maybe
head
have
off.
a
Take the head off?
tree rows, and could you chop off the top and then bud at that point?
You will not chop the head off until you make sure the eyes are well taken off before you chop the head off. Because you need something to keep drawing that sap up. So when you root your rootstock, you have, which will be in the next slide,
I mean, could you
hopefully.
root it further down? Could you bud it further down?
Sure.
Yeah, you probably could. But as long as you got to keep the sap going up, so don't cut the head off before you bud. Okay, this is talking about rootstock. This is rootstock that I've ordered from UC Davis. They'll send you, have anybody ordered any rootstock from UC Davis? Huh? Okay.
Sherry and I have.
Okay, great. And yeah, you just ordered. They'll normally come. These are whips. This is Dr. Huey. This is where I use to order to maybe some special stuff for Hearst Castle, some of the hybrid teas and things that they want on a vigorous rootstock. So I use Dr. Huey. It's virus-free index. By the way, I think any nursery that would bud on any non-virus rootstock should not be in business, because I don't think you should be passing on virus plants to, for the customer to buy. But anyway, so I start out, that's just my opinion, of course. I start out with UC Davis rootstock, which is virus-free index. Okay, that means no virus. They'll send those whips. Of course, it's got the thorns and things like that, so, and the other eyes or stuff. So you have to take off some of the eyes. They ship these, okay, in order to order the rootstock, which you probably caught me at the right time, because I can make an excuse. Jolene, the time to order rootstock's past already. Okay, so what happened is if you're going to decide to order rootstock like me, I'm going to have to order it before November, because that's when they take all the orders for rootstock. So I have a month to think about this, Jolene. And so you put your order in, because other nurseries are putting their other orders in, so you got to make sure you got your order in so you get your allotment. So if anybody who's thinking about ordering rootstock, you better think about ordering it, you know, this month. Okay? And what they do, they'll ship it to you in Oma in a dead of winter. That's when they collect it. So you better have your mist system kind of, you know, ready to go, because you're going to have to root these rootstock in a dead of winter. Okay, so what I have done, you remember earlier, the earlier slide where I got my soil mix? For the rootstock like this, I went and used this tray here is what they call a 36 star tray. It's a little bit bigger than the 50 tray. 36 is 36 cells. So for these 8-foot things, you have to DI, leave 2 growing eyes of Dr. Huey on the top, and then I take off any other eyes off, and then I scrape the bottom. Mr. Moore developed this multi-rooter, has these little teeth, and what you're doing is wounding and scarring the bottom of it. We're exposing 4 little cuts so the cambium layer is exposed. So when you would dip it in root tone, I only use powder, I don't use the liquid. Some of you, there's some debate. I have never tried liquid, but you know, I do so much powder. I'd rather just get the powder and I know it's on there, and instead of making a batch of liquid, after a while it's no good, so you're going to have to dump it if you don't propagate a lot. So if you don't propagate a lot, I just go with powder, and you could get different strength. You can have little bottles of number 1, number 2, 3, and so the higher the number, the more powerful it is to enhance rooting. So remember that. Most of the time if you are buying root tone at Home Depot or something like these little packages, usually the lowest number, and which is good for miniatures and polyantha, easy to root. But when you start getting the little bit harder, difficult to root roses, you might want to go a little bit higher, like a number 3 and a number 8, okay, because it has more of the ingredient to encourage rooting. And the more you expose the cambium layer, which I you know, put little 4 scratches, you're exposing that cambium layer, you dip that root tone, and you're going to have a nice root, not only from the bottom, but from the sides. So you have something really, you know, well rooted for you. Because sometimes if you only have rooted at the bottom, when you start transplanting, you know how it is sometimes? All of a sudden the roots break off. Now you don't have anything. But if you've got side roots, it's hard to break off those side roots. Okay? Yeah, Priya.
Where do you get the higher number?
The higher number, there's it's called Grower Nursery Supply, and they come in probably 8 ounces. So it's not really expensive, about $18 for a number 3, and probably $16 for a number 1. And it come in an 8-ounce plastic container. It's a lot, unless you're going to do thousands of cuttings, you know. But for me, that's all I use. I don't keep a lot of big containers of rooting powder. I just buy whatever I need, and they ship it right away.
Amazon carries
Rooting powder, okay.
all strengths.
All strengths, okay. There you go. I think Amazon, you can almost find anything on Amazon nowadays. And also the paraffin. You'll be able to find paraffin on Amazon. Yes?
You said that you cut how many BUDEYES off? And then
Well, you only leave 2 or 3 on top to keep the sap flowing, because it's going to put out leaves. And any other eyes below that, you just take off, and you just use a budding knife or a strong, you know, really sharp pocket knife. You could do that. Okay. So these are the short ones, and of course that's what you're going to bud to make, you know, bush form roses. Okay, this is ones that I have potted in 1 gallons. Now these are the 4-foot whips from UC Davis that I have rooted, and they're transplanted 1 gallons, and that's what I bud for Hearst Castle. And as soon as they take off, then I'll eventually bump them in a 2-gallon, and then from 2-gallon I'll finish into a 3-gallon, and then I deliver them up to Hearst Castle.
And is that about the same time span
Of rooting? Yeah, I'm gonna get these in, if I order them, I'll get those in December, and they have to be rooted, and they'll be rooted and start callousing through the winter, but it won't be till spring until I actually start transplanting them. When the water, then you'll see the root system. It'll keep rooting through the winter time, developing root system, but it's not gonna put out any foliage for you. Okay. But the root system, it'll keep growing for you.
Are you going to bud those? I mean, who's going to bud them?
I do. You mean who's gonna bud those trees?
I mean, because they're not budded yet, right?
They're not budded. That's just preparing the rootstock to be budded.
Right, so you said you're going to send them as control.
Yeah, but budded. With their varieties, they want me to bud. I would bud on it, and then when the trees get a certain.
When are you going to bud them?
When do I bud those?
Yeah.
Usually during the spring, when the budwood is available off the stock plants of my nursery.
How long do you keep them off of that?
It takes about a year from the time I bud them, from the time they grow to a size, and I normally deliver them in January. So it takes maybe a year and a half from the time, because you got to root the rootstock, get the rootstock, root that, get that into a nice root system where it's pushing the sap up, and then I'll chip bud them when the available budwood is available. I keep chip bedding whatever they want, 15 or 20 pink grasshopper. That seems to be real popular for them. They wanted a lot of those. They keep adding more of those. And then excellent von Sherbert. That polyantha makes a beautiful weeping tree. They just love that. I was up there in November, and that one was still blooming when everything else was not blooming. So they like that, so they have something showing, in the rose garden. So that's very popular, and it makes beautiful tree rows, those. Yeah. Okay, did I answer your question? Okay, thank you. Okay. Alrighty, so preparing the budeyes. This is one, it's called Stella de Holland. Maybe I'm not pronouncing that correctly. But okay, collecting your budwood. Sometimes, have anybody did any chip budding at all? No? Oh, Jolene shook her head. That means Jolene's going to be budding those
I did not say it was
8-foot
successful.
trees.
I just tried it.
Okay, you and Carl, you guys you're gonna piggyback on top of his. Okay. So anyway, preparing budeyes. Let's say you want to do some chip budding. Okay. First of all, your budwood should you can collect your budeye. I have to bud 40 of these for them to replace some of the earlier ones that are not doing as vigorous. And so they want me to bud 40 of these to be planted and replacing 40 of this particular rose up at the castle. So they're going to be budded on between Dr. Huey and Pink Clouds, because this one, it sometimes put out the little bit bigger eyes, and sometimes when you collect eyes, they're a little bit smaller. So if they fit on Pink Clouds, I'll bud on Pink Clouds, but if the bigger eyes will go on Dr. Huey. So what I do, sometimes you forget. Okay, I said, oh gosh, I got to bud these roses. It's blooming. Normally you will let it bloom first and let the stem start aging, and the other bottom eyes will start getting ready to plump up, ready to fork out leaves. So sometimes, you know how it is, you forget. Oh darn it, it already bloomed out, it already leafed out, I forgot, I didn't have time to get the budwood. So I remind myself, this particular stock plant is right in my pathway. So what I did is strip all the leaves, and I just forced, I topped the blooms off, it's finished blooming, so I'm forcing it to swell up those eyes. So when I look at that, it reminds me, oh, these bare sticks, yeah, these are the budwood I'm going to collect. So every day I'll go by, walk by it, and I wait until the eyes will start plumping up and the stem becomes a little bit more stiffer. Because when you do budding, you're going to have to be able to get that knife and take that bud eye off. And if it's too tender, well, it's just going to snap and break. You won't be able to get that bud eye off. So you're conditioning that budwood, and you're forcing the eye to start pumping up. And so when I get back, probably after this trip, I'm going to be collecting that budwood, and I'm going to bud on rootstock that's ready to go. So in order to prepare your budwood, if you have your favorite rose and you says to remind you that you're going to bud this rose, that's what you do. And you see these naked stems, and oh yeah, I'm preparing for budwood. So you won't forget. So anyway, that's how you kind of start preparing to collect your budwood. Okay, so forcing it to harden off so you could collect it. Now if you don't have time to bud it that day, you just collect it, take off the other thorns off, take the leaves off, wrap in a moist paper towel, label it, put it in a poly bag, and put it in the refrigerator in the vegetable department or whatever. And then a couple days later when you have time, I have stored budwood at least up to a week without even dipping it in any type of fungicide or anything. It's fine, as long as your paper towel is clean and everything else clean, no molds and stuff. And then just get it and then bud it. So it's not like a die-hard thing, you gotta hurry up and collect the bud and bud that day. But preferably it's fresh, so I try to do it as quick as possible if I can. But sometimes I'm not always able to do it because it's only me, myself, and I again. So it's one of those things I have to work in my schedule. So this is the end result when you collect the budwood. The background is a moist paper towel. And it's very important when you make cuttings and when you go and collect your cuttings, have a little container with you, either have water and drop it in the water or have a moist paper towel with you so you can wrap it as soon as possible. You got to keep the cuttings or BUDEYES as viable as possible. Don't let it dry out. Don't go into stress. Because you could be the best budder in the world, but if your material is already stressed out and dried out, you can't, it's like squeezing blood out of turnip. No matter what, the best budding skill, if the BUDEYE is not there, already wilted and dried up, you're not going to be successful. So it's very important steps to keep everything moist as possible, okay? So that's what it's, as you can see how nice those plump eyes are, that wood, when you take a hold of it, is stiff. Now after this program, I will be around and I could demonstrate the chip budding. You could go out there, I collected some budwood off of Cinderella and Renee. Anyway, so to show you how to actually chip bud, and you could actually pick up these little sticks of budwood and feel so you would know what you're looking for when you collect your budwood, okay? And I'll be around to demonstrate that for anybody who's interested. Okay. And of course this, it'd be best if you had a budding knife because it is designed for budding. But if you have a sharp pocket knife, that'd be great. You have a dull pocket knife, what you're going to do is just kind of start tearing in. So you want a smooth cut. So at a 45-degree angle, that's what you're going to do. That's a Dr. Huey. We're going to make a standard there. So right where that hand is probably holding the last two eyes there. So you're going to go down below, and we're going to bud a 3-foot standard. Now keep in mind the size of the cut and everything. You're talking about budding a hybrid tea. Of course, that's not going to be the same cut if you were to bud a polyanther or a miniature. Okay, you don't need that big of a cut. So there you go. That's a hybrid tea eye, and she's taken that off. And what you want to do is just slide the bark. And then once you do it, you could use the extra bark on the bottom to use as a handle and stick it up. Now, anybody familiar with tea budding? A lot of people use tea budding, okay? So as you know, in tea budding, you got to have that bark slip and split open. With the chip budding, you're already matching the cambium layer. You could see that you are matching the cambium layer, okay? Because you want cambium layer touching cambium layer, because that's where it's going to heal. With tea budding, you can't quite sure. You're just pushing it, and it's got to slide open really well. If it's not, sap's not flowing, you're forcing it. Sometimes you got your budding knife in there, you're trying to ram that eye in, and you're poking that eye with the knife and poking his eye out. So what you want to do with this method, you're not hurting the bud eye at all. As you can see, she's got her hand underneath the extra bark, and you just slide it underneath that flap, and then you just hold, and then you cut off where the cut was flush. So you got cambium and cambium. And I use parafilm. And I think somebody said you could get that on Amazon. Sure. Find anything on Amazon now. I wonder if we could find an 8-foot standard Renee rose. Anyway, so parafilm, I love parafilm. When I was at Sequoia, when I first budding tree roses, we use those budding rubbers, and sometimes they won't not disintegrate in time, so we have to come back with a knife and do a little cut and pop off the rubber band, the budding band. But with the parafilm, once you wrap it, that's it. You don't have to do anything more, so that eliminates an extra step. It'll expand, crack, and let it grow when it needs to grow. It won't constrict it. So I really love this parafilm. Okay. Now, sometimes one strip, now you can buy this at Amazon. The one I bought, I don't know if Mr. Shaw there, John, have bought parafilm. Do they come in strips or they come in a roll? Or?
One I bought the roll, but
4-inch roll, and then you cut in strips?
yeah.
Okay, that's what I used to. But anyway, that's all you do is cut it in strips and to wrap. Now, for hybrid teas and budding tree roses, sometimes I'll go ahead and get another extra piece to wrap it, especially if the temperature is real hot, might discriminate, start disintegrating a little bit faster. You could check it and just wrap another piece. Very inexpensive, really, easy to wrap. It sticks to itself, so, and if it breaks, you just touch it, and and then I'll show you, demonstrate that, what parafilm looks like. I'll be doing that. And so hopefully this is the end result of Renee when Jolene buds Renee. This is what it's going to look like, right, Jolene? We're going to have Renee. We're going to have to put 2 or 3 eyes on it because we're going to have limited amount of rootstock. It's hard to get 8-footers. So we're going to have to at least put 4 eyes of Renee. And we're going to catty corner and, offset them. So if 1 eye don't take, we'll have 3 left. If 3 eyes don't take, we'll have 2. If only 1 eye take, we're just going to have to shape it a little bit, but it'll be a tree rose. But anyway, hopefully Renee will start looking like that after Jolene gets through with it. And then what happens, we're going to cut the top of that Dr. Huey and let these, the eyes grow because we want the sap and the growth to, pay attention more to those bud eyes and force those eyes to keep growing. And then you just pinch back a little bit as they grow. Yes, and let's say Jolene had complete failure on this. All 4 eyes didn't take.
You have just, let's say one is growing, but the other 2 or 3 didn't take.
Oh, I see.
Add more to
You can. I've never tried it, but I see, to offset it and bud again. Oh no, Jolene, you're going to have to try if one.
I don't think you want to use the same site. You have to move over.
Yeah, not on the same scar cut. We'll have to make a new cut. Yeah.
what that takes.
Yeah. I haven't tried it, but I imagine Jolene will probably try. She's going to have to. We'll have little amount of rootstock. We'll find out. But I have never tried that, but I don't see why not. If you do it quick enough, before that one, really start. Yeah. And before you take the Dr. Huey off, and if you know for sure only 1 took, turn around a little bit and add a couple more and see what happens.
Would you have to go above it or below that,
I would go below it.
the one that's growing? It doesn't.
Right. I would go below a little bit. But, unless you cut the top off. If you haven't cut the top of the Dr. Huey, the 2 that keep putting, you could go above it.
Would it draw to the top?
Yeah, because as long as you kept the original Dr. Huey on top to keep drawing the sap. Now, if you top it off already, see where that top one is? If you cut off the Dr. Huey, you cannot bud any taller than that. You have to go below it. But if you haven't, and there's space, you could bud in between that eye and the Dr. Huey that you have on there. Okay, who's going to try it?
Rose will do it.
Rose will do it.
Rose will
Okay.
Well, I want to be sure to get this in my calendar, so what month of the year?
Okay, might be next year. We got to get that rootstock, at least get it and be able to root it.
March?
I think I'm going to have to start that in a gallon, just to root it in a gallon, that size. And I'll have to stabilize it and probably stake it up from flopping over, and I'm going to have a big mist
Tie
head.
it to a tree.
Okay, Julie. Okay, is there any questions so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
What month do you do this, buddy?
Is whenever, usually after your rootstock is well rooted. And that could probably be mid-spring, once it start well rooted. And then if it's real, have a nice root ball, because for this type of project, we have to have a really nice well-rooted system, because we got to have feed all the way up to the top. The reason why a lot of people don't make these top roses, because it's hard to get that sap up going to feed those bud eyes. And usually it'll start dying off, because it can't reach up that high, the sap. So that root system is going to have to be really pumping some water up there.
So you're
Yes, we're borrowing the root system. We're going to,
actually taking a bud from what you want.
Renee
Renee,
onto Dr. Huey.
on
I'm going to use your name, Jolene, when I call you C. Davis.
You can use my name.
Okay.
It doesn't matter, they don't know who I am. But they will.
They'll well now. Okay.
What do you do at the top of that?
By then, that stage, you're going to cut it off at the top, because you want all the sap to devote the growth and everything to those 2 eyes. Otherwise, the rootstock would just take over. The Huey on top. Yes.
So it would grow.
Yes. If I didn't cut off the Dr. Huey, it's drawing. What happened was when you leave that Dr. Huey to begin with, you're drawing sap to keep that rootstock alive and going up there. And so now it has grown and healed. You don't need that anymore. So you're going to kind of cut that off and devote the sap to these 2 eyes. Now, Dr. Huey is vigorous, so it'll start growing canes. So you could trim those back a little bit to devote more attention to these 2 eyes. but you want to make sure it's well established before you cut it off completely. Okay? Okay. When would you cut off the rootstock of Dr. Huey at the top is when you could tell that the two BUDEYES are taken off for sure, okay? And so you want to cut completely the Dr. Huey two eyes off, so that way devote the growth to the two eyes. Now, meanwhile, if you're not doing that, Dr. Huey would grow these long canes, and it will dominate the sap flow and everything, and eventually, if you ignore it, it'll thin out canes and cover up these eyes, and it won't have the chance to start growing. So, but you can trim back these canes of Dr. Huey back so it's manageable, but you want it still alive because unless you know for sure it is taken off, you know. And what you can do is the cheating method. This is what I do. I'll go over there and peel off some of that parafilm off from the bottom, and you can see it's callousing really well. And then you could peel off that parafilm and go, okay, it's nicely healed in. Boop, Dr. Huey's off. Yes, when it starts rooting, when it pretty much get to that stage, and you can look a little bit closer to this film, that it's all callus underneath that. And sometimes you could see the callus is protruding, and that parafilm is cracked, and it's ready to go ahead and take off. Just the Dr. Huey rootstock. Okay? Okay, the next one, this is what I did, this is a challenge. Here we go again. I'm going to have her, Jolene, bud a 10-foot donut peach tree.
I don't do peaches.
She don't do peach trees. Okay, this is what happens. When you learn to chip bud, it's just like when you learn to do cuttings. You not only do roses, you go and see something you like, and a shrub or perennial, and everything, you go take a cutting, you know, and take it home, try to root it. Same way with me, okay? When you start learning to bud, this method here, you could use it to bud not just roses. Right here is a good example. I went, March, I have a donut peach tree at my nursery. It's in a 36-inch box, wooden box. And I said, I like these peaches. I want another peach tree. I have another peach tree that is a yellow clean peach. Send these nice young shoots from the bottom. And I says, I'm going to try budding this little peach tree and give me another peach tree onto this other peach tree. So I have two different varieties of peaches on one tree. So I got the nice plump budwood in March before the peach trees start leafing out. You collect that wood, you chip bud onto another nice young stem, and there you go. It just took like crazy. And now I have peaches like crazy the next year to start producing. And it's so vigorous because it's taken off from this original rootstock off of this tree that's well established, so it's already feeding it. So you cut back a few limbs off the other original, devote a little bit more attention to that one branch, a new grafted branch. So you got another peach tree that you like. So it works for, I've budded citrus trees the same way. I budded loquat trees this way. So there's a lot of different things you can learn through this method of chip budding. Okay? So, like I said, what you see here is the inside of a dinosaur. These ribs here are recycled clay cable companies that they were going to take to the dump. And they were 12 foot long, and then I just ran a 2x4 down the middle and put a screw in, tied it all in. And so it's about 12 foot wide, and then it's 8 or 10 feet, and you can just roll plastic over real easy if you want to cover it. But I believe in the 3 R's. I reduce, I recycle, and I reuse. A lot of my pots are all reused. I don't take the time to wash them and scrub them. I just reuse them. And sometimes if I had a dead plant, if it's not weedy or too much, it's just the plant's dead, I recycle the soil, use it to transplant in something in a 15-gallon and pop a 5-gallon plant in there. I might not reuse the soil for my young plants, but for a well-established plant, you could reuse the soil or mix part of that soil in with some new soil. But you can reuse all this stuff, and I have no problems with that. I have no problems at my nursery, so I believe in the 3 R's. And also, I believe in not doing too much spraying. So I like to encourage honeybees, and salvias is really great. When your roses are not blooming, plant some salvias, plant some native California native plants, and you know, and they're kind of drought tolerant. They do well with other roses, and they encourage, when roses are not blooming, honeybees, butterflies, hummingbirds. I like to encourage those type of things on my place. And of course, my little favorite is the praying mantis. Loves roses. Does anybody have praying mantis that you noticed in your yard? I just love those little things. So I hate to spray because you never know when you're going to be killing these beneficial insects. So when I see those, they're just so neat. Sometimes I'll just have a bouquet of roses in a vase, and if I find praying mantis, I'll just put it on there. It'll stay on there. And then they'll kill off any bugs that are gnats or come around on your flowers. It's so neat. And it'll just stay there. As long as I keep refreshing the bouquet, it stays there. So I've been watching, I'm working, I'm entertained by this, and you actually watch it kill a fly, kill a bee, and so quick, and they'll just stay there. As long as you keep refreshing that bouquet for it, it'll stay on there. So it's kind of pretty neat. And so I love it when I see these on my roses. They're just helping you. They just get rid of things. But so anyway, because of the work that I do, I think my passion is not only saving rare roses, but be able to help restore historical rose garden. Jolene, is this a rose garden you're talking about? Is it historical?
You know it is.
Okay. Okay, so we'll work a little harder on that because it's historical. But anyway, these are some of the roses. Now, I went up there in November when I took these photos up at Hearst Castle. And so, this is towards some of the guest houses, and those are one of the roses that were planted earlier in 2008 that has grown. And so we have tree roses at various stages now that I have planted up there. 5 minutes? Okay. So anyway, and then preservation of some rare roses. During my travels, I ran across this one, and the information is on the desk out there. This one has happened to be named after the renowned Union Hotel in Occidental. Has anybody been there? A lot of Bay Area people have known and heard about that hotel. I was lucky to go there when I was collecting some budwood for the Hearst Castle project when Vintage Nursery was still in business. Went up there to get some budwood that I needed and visit Don Marshall's place, Miniature Plant Kingdom, you remember him? And got some material. He was going out of business and he donated some flats and things for me. So my cousin wandered out there. She goes, let's go and eat at the Union Hotel. I'll go, really? I said, yeah, it's just down in Occidental. It's really good. My mom and dad took us. And I said, okay. And she wanted a recipe that was posted up there on the wall. So we went down there and I met the lady. If you ever went there, the owners, third generation family, and that hotel's been there, a lot of history, has been there since 1924. Cut the story short, she had a rose there in the patio. They built a patio around that rose. That rose has been there before 1924. So it's been there as long as that hotel, even earlier. So they preserved that. She didn't know what the name of the rose was, and I said, okay, I'll take some cuttings, I'll root some, and I have a lot of rose people come to my nursery. I'll send it out, take pictures. We'll try to find out what the name of that rose is. So I sent it to Jerry Jennings, and she passed around to the historical rose people that is in charge of preservation of these rare roses, and we couldn't ID it. And so I told Barbara, I says, Barbara, if we can't name it, we're going to name it Occidental Union Hotel. And so that's what his name is. And there's a big history about it, and she's great food, great company, and they treat you like family, and beautiful rose. It's a one-time bloomer, but believe me, blooms in clusters, and it blooms for a whole month. And that is worth it. It's thornless. That's another good thing about it. Propagates well. That's my favorite thing about it. And the history behind it. So I like to do that and pass that rose around. For all we know, that could be the only rose there. So anyway, that concludes my my program. And another thing, why do we need to promote and save roses? Okay, as we know, the rose is the queen of all flowers. We've got to save the queen. Can't let the queen die. Okay, roses are a reflection of beauty, time, and history. I've learned a lot. Roses touch our emotions. A lot of times I get customers that says, I have a rose I remember that was in my grandmother's yard and I'm looking for it. So it touches people's emotions. And like Tom Cruise said, as long as we have romance, we will have roses. So roses help us physically and mentally. Maybe physically the scratches, no. But I find when I have a bad day, I go to my roses and work with my roses, I have peace of mind. And without roses, there will be no rose nurseries. And that'll be me. Yes. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your attendance and your support. Okay.